Hello and welcome to New Filmmakers Los Angeles. I am delighted to be joined again with Alyssa with her fantastic film she had as part of the film festival. But for those that haven't seen Liftoff, let's take a look at the clip.
Check. Backup boosters. Check. Tunes for the ride. Check. All important systems are a go. Commander McDowell, you are free to launch. Make us proud, Commander. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2,
Danny,
1.
get down here.
Alyssa, big virtual hug. So glad that you're here. Amazing. Thank you for bringing your film to us. Like I'm so grateful that you made this film for us. But for those that haven't seen it, tell us a brief synopsis of your film.
Sure. So Liftoff is about a young boy in the South, his childhood dreams versus his adult reality, and how those two things ended up being very incongruous. So, I wanted to make something. I was at a point in my life where I'd felt very kind of disappointed with where I was. And I had thought back a lot to when I was a kid, and I had like these big dreams. I wanted to save the world and make an impact. And, being really sad that I wasn't doing those things. So I wanted to make something that reflected, the pain that can come as an adult when you kind of reflect and feel like you're not where you wanted to be. And even more so from the perspective of a parent, right? So, you are talking to the thing you love most in the whole world and listening to them have these big dreams and these hopes. And even though they're very possible, right? A lot of the time, I feel like internally parents have that feeling of like, oh, fuck, like, the odds are going to be stacked against them in some way. They're going to experience hardship. They might not make that huge dream a reality. And I think that's a very painful thing. So I wanted to put a picture to that kind of feeling.
I mean, you did that in it's always so amazing to watch your film and be like, wow, I've never seen this before, and my goodness, you did that. And, I think it's so, from obviously this younger self had, elements of a difficult household, and I kind of know how that feels like myself. And that you could just end up in all different kinds of scenarios. It could be good, it could be really bad. You don't know the crowd that you're going to get into, and just kind of that involvement of this good kid with good intentions, and just, how your life could be mapped out so differently in an instant,
Yeah.
and the way you captured this. I was talking to some of the new filmmaker staff, like it was picturesque to watch, and it was heart-wrenching to watch at the same time. And you just created this world for us that was just hard to watch, and at the same time, like, just hot tears pouring out, like, goodness me, it was really a lot. For you, I mean, for you personally, like, I love this kind of transformation of, like, from younger self to older self. Like, I mean, I thought your actors were just wonderful because you had to really capture that. Like, tell us a little bit about that journey, because even though we only saw glimpses of their lives, I felt so much from them both. Like, I could feel it.
Man, what's really interesting, like, I'm stoked that the story got told. And, a big part of kind of its success right now is, because, Rudy's in it, and he's kind of big right now. That just contributes to it. But this project it's a lot bigger than either of those things because of what went into the production of itself. Like, I was working on Outer Banks at the time. And so I had, dropped everything in my life. I drove my, like, broken down Prius to South Carolina. I didn't have any friends. I didn't have any family. And I wrote this short, and I was a PA. Like, I didn't know Rudy. We weren't friends. I wrote this short, and I just wanted his opinion on it. And he had read it, and he was stoked about it, and he wanted to shoot it with me. And I was like, this is my chance to work with an actor. You know what I mean? An actor on a Netflix show. And a big part of directing is putting out fires, right? So, week after week, I would just wake up every single day being like, what fire am I going to put out today to make sure that I'm going to be able, on this date to shoot this thing. And the week before we were supposed to shoot, a girl that I had met on the production was kind of like our producer. So she connected me to like the gear, the locations, the camera crew, all this stuff. And she called me and she was like, hey, I'm dropping out. Meaning you have no locations, no gear, no camera crew, nothing. And I had no more money to throw at it. I couldn't just be, hey mom, come over and hold the boom so I can shoot this thing. And I bawled that night because I had no other resources. Like I was like, this is over. Like I can't put this fire out. And I called my director of photography who lives in California. And he was just about to fly out, and we've done a lot of projects together. And I was like, hey, we can't do it. I can't do it. And he's typically the very positive dude. He's typically like, you can do it. You're fine. You're talented. Like, we got this. And he paused and he was like, okay. Like he knew how likely it was that we were not going to be able to fix any of this. And he was like, if that's what you want to do, like I'm there with you. We won't do it. And I think it was that conversation. I was like, no, I have to do it. And again, we were working, all that week I was working 14-hour days on the TV show. So I didn't have a lot of time to, try to scramble things together. Luckily I had made friends with the crew on the show. And I was like, hey, can I just borrow your personal equipment for the show for this weekend, and I'll have it back to you Monday morning. And after everything was said and done, I was driving home with Curtis, my DP, and we looked at each other and we were like, this is the most beautiful thing we've ever shot. Oh. So that's why it's special, is because I had lost everything, dude. I didn't have anything to make that thing happen. And it came together very last minute.
I'm so proud of you, Alyssa. Like, honestly, because that is the epitome of just, a filmmaker that can just sustain and come through everything, because it's a lot of heart, sweat, and tears coming into it. But I'm so happy you did. And speaking of wonderfully shot, it was so wonderfully shot. Like, it was amazing. The cinematography was so good. This world you kind of took us in. I mean, it was like the way you kind of filmed it also too, you really, the kind of overpowering, father figure in there, it felt kind of, it felt closed in. Like I felt like I was the little boy kind of closed in this world of just these, parental figure, one parent that wants to help you progress and one that's holding you back. And, this kind of very uncomfortable feeling you have as a child when you feel insecure. Mm-hmm. I felt that the way you shot it on camera came across as well. Was that something you kind of wanted to kind of create in there? And then also in the way it was shot, the fact that in the older scenes, again, that felt, again, very tight. And I was just like, I am feeling this right now.
That I have to attribute that to my DP for sure. I mean, we had a lot of conversations about the look, but he flew into a state that he had never been in before, right? Because South Carolina is gorgeous. And we were fortunate enough. The young boy who plays Danny, his mom, we shot at his house. And that's what the house looked like. It was on this island in South Carolina. And that was what their house looked like. I was like, this is gold, dude. We don't have to do any production design. You know what I mean?
Awesome, right? The great house.
Yeah. So we were fortunate, and they're the ones that built like the electric chair and all the props. So I got lucky with that, dude, for sure.
So happy. That's good. That's part of what it is really as well. But you directed it. I mean, listen, how do you go about as a director? Like, how do you work with your actors? Like, obviously the stakes are kind of, obviously this beautiful relationship between mother and son, which I just love watching being played out. And how do you work with your actors? Because obviously there was scenes where it was very high stakes, and then, scenes where you want to create that relationship. How was that experience for you?
I mean, that's the coolest part, and that's the most personal part. You write something that the writing process is really daunting, right? I mean, you spend a lot of nights alone, You spend a lot of nights thinking like, this is shit. Like these actors are going to read this and they're going to be like, this is crap. And I was also nervous because, you know, several of the actors were on a Netflix show. I was like, they're going to read my stuff and they're gonna be like, what am I doing? Like, I'm not going to shoot this thing. But luckily they believed in it and they believed in the story and it was on the page. And so, you know, I always think that, you know, if the right dialogue and the story's on the page, it's pretty easy to have those conversations. You know, one of the main conversations I had with Rudy was about, you know, his walk on the dock when you see him as an adult for the first time, because that's really the pivotal moment in the whole story.
Mm-hmm.
And we were like, well, what, you know, what would we spent, gosh, like 5 hours just talking about how would his walk look like? You know, what would he be feeling? Like, what would his cadence be and how he's walking? You know, like we had in-depth conversations about who this person was, how he'd be reflecting on, you know, his childhood and just that gap in between, you know, whatever that gap is, right? Whatever crime he did, however he ended up there. You know, I let Rudy fill in a lot of that. I let the actors, you know, I tell them, you know, what I think, and I let them interpret it in their way and then put their flair on it, right? Because I always think if you bring in the right people who believe in the story, they're going to take what's on the page, right, and elevate it. You know, that's the hope, right? They're going to elevate it into something that is a million times better than anything that you wrote on the page, which is what happened. And so, yeah.
I go as far as saying I think it's one of the most important short dramas I've seen, because you touched upon a story and one particular story that I think has so much morality and analogy to it that I couldn't even comprehend it. It made me cry in many different ways and become emotional about it because, you know, everyone starts as a child and you hope that child is filled with love. And it made me think about all the people that are wrongfully ended up in the wrong situation, ended up in jail, have broken families, end up in the wrong crowd, got taken their life in a different direction. And as adults, they're now in jail or even worse, you know, gone through a situation of what, you know, your character went through. And it makes me so sad to think that, you know, somewhere down the line from this young boy with his dreams and his beautiful dreams of lifting off, you know, it went from that to this. And even though that had a sort of symbolic analogy in itself, was that kind of something as well that like you sort of wanted to articulate? Because it made me feel that there's so many children right now that we could just help along the way to steer them in a direction that hopefully they'll never go into. But also how quickly and your life could suddenly change where maybe your life takes a completely different path. But we were all kids once, hopefully full of love and understanding, right?
That's what's crazy, man, is that I think that's a devastation that you can't quite put an emotion to, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, there's plenty of times where, and it's not like I'm constantly thinking about it, right? Typically it hits you in weird moments, right? Mm-hmm. It hits you in moments and then you're just like, oh shit. And Liftoff shows that in a very exaggerated way, right? It's typically not, you know, I ended up committing a gigantic crime and now I'm in prison. Right. You know, sometimes it's just like, oh my gosh, I wanted to be something so different. I wanted to act differently. I wanted to be, you know, a better person, whatever, than what I had hoped I would be. And, you know, it's these little, I made it a point in Liftoff not to make the dad, you know, abusive or curse at him or these very obvious things where you're like, oh, he's probably going to end up being a serial killer or something like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I wanted it to be very reflective of like, it's little things, it's little jabs along your, you know, along your growth that can shift you slowly along the way. And then you get older and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I'm someone totally different. I'm somewhere totally different than what I expected to be. And that was a big point with Austin, who plays the dad, that we had that conversation where I didn't want like the typical like overly abusive dad, because he's not besides raising his voice, right, he doesn't,
No.
Get
Yeah.
overly aggressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also that it doesn't have to be something extreme for it to be effective on someone. You know what I mean? Like it's, I'm sure the majority of families have had experiences like this, but you don't realize, like you said, the little jabs that can kind of like, maybe press you to think or be a certain way. So I
Yeah.
totally understand what you're saying with that. How does it feel when, you're going, I mean, I just think about you and this, you said when you were just in a place where you didn't know, you were in that car, you were writing that story, then you go and get this incredible, successful cast, so you end up being in your film. It's an honor to have it with us at New Filmmakers LA. Then it so happens to be the event that partners with the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. Then it's the umbrella celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month. How has that experience been for you?
It's amazing, and I'm very grateful. I do make it a point to take, because the cool part of being in this industry, right, or not, and it can also be a hardship, is once a story is done, once a project is done, right, it's done. Like, I spent, so much time in Liftoff. I shot it a little over a year ago, and for the entire year, it's been, from the inception to the production to the post to the music to the festivals, right? Like I've lived it every single day. And so it can be devastating to put it to bed and think about, okay, cool, I have to come up with something totally new now. It's a cool part of the industry. It can also be a very hard part of the industry. So I make it a point to take, the really exciting, and the good with also like, the bad or, bad.
Yeah.
it being the sad part. So it's cool. It's cool. I don't know what else to say besides it's really cool.
Well, it's deserving, and it's so nice when all the hard work and the things you've had to fight through to make the film, like it's so delightful when it's it's with an audience in these great experiences and great places. And so credit to you, which brings me on to say, what is next for you?
Well, I just finished writing a TV pilot about a young Hispanic rock band in the 90s. And I actually shot a trailer with Rudy and with a couple other kids from Outer Banks, as well as we put a pitch deck together for that. And then I also finished a second feature script as well.
Oh, amazing.
So yeah, dude, since COVID happened, I just dove like super deep into writing stories and having material ready for when things start back up again. So, right now it's really all about, for me and my team, making those connections and figuring out how to move those things forward.
Yeah.
Right. Cause like a feature and getting something like that made, that's a lot more money, is a whole other beast.
Yep.
And then I also wrote a short film that I might try to shoot at the end of the year, potentially.
Oh, I want to, what I enjoy hearing about your experiences and the things that you've accomplished and gone through. And it's really a credit to you. And like, to come over hurdles and just to keep going and get there is wonderful. And I'm just curious, like, is there anything like in your heart or what you've learned in your career thus far that maybe you could share with other filmmakers to kind of just help them in their process of creating films and making films, or anything that you kind of go by that keeps you moving along, in your creativeness?
I think it's easy for people who are in film school or starting out to look at me or me having to sing the festival with someone like Rudy and be like, cool, I want to be where they are. I mean, just like, a couple months ago, I would have been thinking the same thing. So I think comparing yourself to other filmmakers or people like Tarantino and Scorsese, it can be really damaging and daunting, and instead of focusing on like, cool, where am I right now? And what are the resources I have right now to make something? And, to go back to kind of the first, story I told you about getting this thing done, it's, make no matter what. Like I literally, I had nothing. Like I had no money, no friends, no equipment, no locations. And yet there was a way. right? Even when I was like, there is no other way to get this done. It got done. And of all the shorts I've made, of all the stories I've told thus far in, you know, my film career, it's the best thing that I've done. You know, so there's always an answer, and there's always a way to just do the project anyway to the best of your ability, even for the, you know, even when, if it's all said and done, the project isn't what you wanted it to be, you know, you think it's not that good, you learn a lot and you connect with other filmmakers and you bring people together, you know, and there's value in that. Especially if you're someone that wants to make, you know, a feature one day. It's cool to be on projects where everything goes wrong, because that's where you learn, right?
Absolutely. No. Oh, thank you. No, thanks for sharing that. And, you now have even more friends at New Filmmakers LA. So welcome to our family too.
Thanks, man.
I'm so happy you made this film. I think in so many different levels, it can touch hearts and help people understand and just engage in a really, really good story. I'm so glad that you shared it with us. And I just need to keep making more movies, please. We need you. That's all.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you. That's very nice. Thank you.